Thank you, Tom. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce the others who are presenting with me this evening. And if you could all just come up here and stand so we can see you as I introduce you all. Peter Provenzano is the co-team leader with me on the Case for Change. We have Becky Kendall and Dr. Norm from the Rockford Health Council, which is an organization that for many years has been working on promoting quality community health in this community, and since 1999 has done several healthy community studies. Then we have John Lewis, who is an economist. He's behind me. I guess I should move this way. Who has been studying the Rockford area for 25 years and has worked on a number of prior efforts in planning and working on the community. And then finally we have Steve Ernst, who is the director of RMAP and also one of the co-directors of the Vital Signs Project. So let's go ahead and get started. In developing the Case for Change, we wanted to set the current state to identify what we think are the brutal facts. And there are plenty of them, and you're going to hear from everyone up here on the stage this evening about them. We're also going to talk about some of the positive things in our community, because there is hope, and we are convinced that with purpose and resolve, we can transform this community. We've tried to leverage the work that has gone on before us by looking at and using the studies that have been done by Vital Signs and the Rockford Health Council. We've looked at a lot of data, and we've talked to a number of experts who have looked at these issues before and understand a lot of the challenges that we have made or have in front of us. So we've been listening to the experts. But there are a couple of things that I want and our team wants to make absolutely clear. The first is that the facts that you're about to hear are truly probably not all of the brutal facts that are out there in our community. These are the ones that have spoken to us, and we expect that there are other brutal facts in our community that speak to you. We want to hear from you. Consider this Case for Change in draft form. We need your input to know what the things are in the community that concern you and ought to be added to our Case for Change. Who's got the clip? Peter? There we go. As you can see, we've grouped the brutal facts we'll be presenting, and the positives, in three areas: social, economic, and environmental. You're going to hear brutal facts in each of these three areas, as well as a few positives. And we think that you will see that there are many, many brutal facts in those areas. Despite a lot of good intentions and a lot of effort, there are facts and problems that are persisting in each of these areas. The triangle reflects the fact is that as our team has looked at these things, and frankly as a number of people have looked at them before, you can't help but understand how interrelated the problems are, and that it's very difficult to consider problems in one area without considering root causes and considering problems in another area. So, a couple of other things. We understand that some may have concerns with some of the statistics and facts we're going to present. Some of the indexes you've heard before, because we wonder whether it's fair to compare our community to other communities of different sizes or different backgrounds, or because we don't care for the factors that are included in these indexes, or because we wonder where the statistics come from and how the data is reported. Our take on this is that it would be a mistake to focus on those things. The statistics and the indexes that other people use are how others perceive us, and they affect how we perceive ourselves. And quite frankly, when you look at them all together, as we will here this evening, we think that you will come to the conclusion, as we have, that they speak very loudly that the conditions here are unacceptable. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Becky and Dr. Norm to talk about social.
Good evening. When we talk about health and we talk about health factors, we normally think about health care. But health is about the social determinants of health. Social determinants, you say, that means social conditions. Can I get to the store to get me groceries to feed my family? Did the educational system provide me with the education that I need to be employed by that employer? Do I have an opportunity to have access to good health care? All of these things, health care and social conditions, environmental conditions, and economic conditions, speak to what we're talking about when we're talking about integrating health. Now, I am here to tell you that this is very, very important as we look at where are we going to transform Rockford. I tell people what to do, so I am going to have Dr. Norum do the heavy lifting with the statistics.
Thank you, Becky. We're going to talk a little bit about the factors of poor health. The Robert Wood Johnson organization, along with the University of Wisconsin Population Institute, every year rank counties in our state from 1 to 102 in terms of health factors. We rank 101 out of 102. That's certainly not where we want to be. And it's broken down into these four major areas: health, behavior, clinical care, social and economic factors, and physical environment. So I'll just run through a few brutal facts about each of these areas. When it comes to health behaviors, they rank us about 75th out of 102. A couple of the disturbing facts are we're 29% obesity in Winnebago County. If you add in overweight, that gets us to about 65%. Our teen birth rate is a third higher than the state average. Social economic factors, we rank again towards the bottom, 101. A couple of things are children in single parent homes, we're again a third higher than the state average. Crime rate, and we'll hear more about this, is at least double the state average. Clinical care I'll talk about a little bit later. Physical environment, again we rank 101 out of 102. This has to do with water quality, air quality, and something I never thought of, we have more fast food restaurants. I guess that does translate into obesity. A few comments on single parent households. This data was taken from our Healthy Community Study 2010. About 12% of our households are single parent here in Winnebago County, and that translates about 30 to 50% higher than the state average. Another related issue from our Healthy Community Study is the fact that 50% of the births in this county in 2008 were born to single mothers. And in the African American community, that's 85%. Again, brutal facts that we need to change. One of the implications of those numbers is a statistic I've heard repeated many times, that a child in a household with two parents who both have a high school education only has about a 5% chance of being in poverty. If a child is in a single parent household and that parent does not have a high school education, the chance is about 70%. So this really affects those issues. And one other fact that doesn't quite fit into that that's really disturbing is the child abuse rate in our county. It's the highest it's been in 20 years. Again, something we need to change. Mental health. In our Healthy Community Survey, we found that about 32,000 people between the ages of 18 and 54 related having significant mental illness. In the older population, it's about 12,000. If you add those numbers up, that's approaching a sixth of our population. So that's, again, not where we want to be. And finally, just a little bit about cost. What does some of this in terms of these poor outcomes, poor factors, cost our community? Well, you've probably heard that we're an overweight community. A Gallup report a while back said that we were the 4th heaviest community in the country. Well, one of the strongest predictors of diabetes is obesity. Our diabetic rate is not much different than the national average at 8.1%. If you add up the economic costs, which are about $8,000 a year per diabetic, over and above normal healthcare costs, given our population, that's about a $200 million bill for diabetes for Winnebago County. That's some significant numbers. That's something we need to change. And with that, I'll turn it back to Bobby.
Thank you. Let's talk for a few minutes about crime and safety. When I first came back to Rockford 30 years ago, I don't think I knew anyone who had been the victim of a crime. Today, I don't know that any of us sitting in this theater can say that they, either themselves or nobody that they know, has not been a victim of a crime. We know that the crime rates in our community have increased. They've gone down slightly. Here's a little piece of good news here, because it's a small piece. As we read in the paper this morning, the crime rates were down just a little bit. But let's talk about some other things. Just a few years ago, based on 2010 data, we were considered the 9th most dangerous city in the United States, based on our crime rates. That's unacceptable. More recently, 2011 data put our violent crime rates 251% higher than the national average, and our property crime rates 65% higher than the national average. And again, while we read this morning that crime rates are coming down just a little bit in the last reporting period, here are some of the numbers year to date. I think we would all agree that those numbers are unacceptable and ugly. There's just too much violent crime, too much property crime in our community, and we all need to work on making that change. All right, we go on to Becky.
You've heard brutal facts, but there are some things that are positive about what goes on in this community. That is that we are a diverse community that mirrors what it looks like in the whole United States. The quality of health care and the social service providers are able to provide a delivery system. There's one thing that is an outstanding piece of information for me that I think shows that there is progress towards some of the things that are going on in this community. As you well know, we are trying to enroll people in health care. For the first time in my career, have I ever seen the judicial system and the health systems come together around a key issue of population health. This is an example of how organizations can come together and make a change and be an example for where we can go and make those changes in the community. Singer closed a year ago. And what has happened? There has been a triage center that is being utilized, and we have been able to divert over 1,500 people from the emergency rooms of our health systems. United Way. United Way has installed a 211 system that has given us some critical data to help us gain information about where can we make those referrals or make those connections. So there might be some brutal facts, and in the midst of these happy facts, there still are some bad facts. But folks, it's about you. It's about each and every one of you who are here with us this evening who say, I believe in Rockford. I believe in Winnebago County. I believe in transforming. I believe in how can we make a change. Look at the bad, 101 out of 102. Let's move it to 50 to number 1 out of 102. We have to make this change in this community.
I just want to add a couple thoughts to what Becky has said very eloquently. The Robert Wood Johnson, U of W, also rates us based on outcomes. And actually, our county doesn't do as bad. We move up to 82. Outcomes are based on morbidity, illness, mortality, death rates. And I'd like to think one of the reasons that we don't rate so poorly in terms of outcomes is the fact, back to that clinical care number, we were 39 out of 102. I think that gets back to the facilities that we have, the hospitals, the healthcare facilities, the mental health abilities, and the fact that we have a large number of primary care physicians. So my final thought is, as you've heard, the health of an individual depends on the health of the community. The health of the community depends on the health of the individuals in that community. Thank you.
Got to change, Peter? Okay. Well, when we talk about the current state of economic vitality in the Rockford region, there are certainly a number of variables that we can use to do that. And what we've decided to concentrate on tonight is those that we typically see in the media, those that we talk about on kind of a day in and day out basis. If we take a look at the Rockford Vital Signs Project, I think there's over 60, 65 different measures of economic vitality. But let us concentrate tonight on 3 or 4 that really make a difference. The basic measure of economic health historically and currently in the major media is the unemployment rate. As we'll see in a few minutes, the unemployment rate, while a very popular metric, does not measure employment. It only measures those who are not employed and who are part of the labor force. So in addition to unemployment information, we'll take a look at actual employment information and talk a little bit about what percentage of our adult labor force is actually employed. Poverty is an outcome, if you will, of income. Poverty is an outcome of the economy not being strong enough to provide good jobs, good incomes to the people. And education is an indicator of the quality of the workforce in the region, and is crucial to the economic vitality both today and going forward. If we concentrate on unemployment or on employment for a couple minutes, the unemployment rate in Rockford right now, or in the Rockford region, is 10.3%, which is 40% or 50% higher than the unemployment rate for the country as a whole. Now, historically, one can argue, well, we understand that because we're coming out of a recession, and Rockford has always come out of a recession slower than the rest of the nation. I would argue that that is true, but every recession since the 70s, the rate at which Rockford has come out of a recession measured by unemployment has been slower and slower compared to the national average. If we look at the other side of the house, if you take a look at the population 18 and over in the region, 55% of that population is gainfully employed. That's a comparison to 62% for the nation as a whole. So from our adult population perspective, 7% less of our people are employed than the nation as a whole. And that leads, I think, to our next set of figures dealing with income. Basic, income in reality is a function of working. And while you can earn income in a variety of ways, the major portion of income is earned through wages. Over the last 40 years, Rockford has fallen from a per capita personal income being on par with the nation to a per capita personal income being 19% below the national average. The other disturbing factor when we take a look at income is where the income comes from. 25% of the income in the region comes from various government programs, whether that be Social Security, income support programs, TANF, WIC, whatever. But 25% comes from some type of social programs. But that in and of itself is important because only 18%, 18% of income nationally comes from these types of transfer programs. But of those programs, in 40 years ago, 88% of the income from government programs was Social Security. Today, Social Security only accounts for 34% of those government payments, and other public aid social programs accounts for 66% of those types of programs. So the income data, as I said, is symptomatic of poverty. So let's take a quick look at poverty in the region. The recent census data shows that 1 in 4 residents in the region live in poverty, and 30% of regional households have income below the poverty guidelines. 30% of our youth live in poverty households. If you take a look at students in the Rockford schools or regional schools, the percent from low-income families as measured by eligible for free and reduced lunch program, 79% of the students in Rockford schools are from low-income households, and from the two districts in Boone County, it's 50%. For Harlem, it's only 53%. So, another indication of a metric that is non-desirable. And the final metric that I'd like to look at is a look at the education. Education levels, education background really determine the quality of the workforce, and in reality determine the ability to retain and attract a business industry and good jobs. For the economy as a whole, 20% of the workforce in our region has completed some college, compared to 28% for the nation as a whole. But we're investing a significant amount in our education system. For K-12 education in the region, the investment is somewhere between $9,000 and $11,000 per student per year, depending upon the district. However, the outcomes, one could argue, lag the investment. The percentage of graduates that are prepared for college coursework is 40% below the state average in some districts, and in other districts 40% above the state average, which also indicates that not only do we have these issues, but they are unevenly distributed throughout the region. Likewise, the percentage of students who graduate within 4 years in some cases are as high as 25% below the state average. So this really raises the question, is the region developing? Does the region have, and is the region developing a workforce with the knowledge and skills necessary for 21st century employment? Well, although economics is often looked at as a dismal science, economists do have the ability to take a look at the assets of a community and provide insight into positives for the future. While there are many of those that we could refer to, in the interest of time, let me just talk about 4. 2 that I think are integral but intertwined are the entrepreneurial mindset and ingenuity. The Rockford region has long been a region that has gone through transformation. It used to be known as a furniture kind of center. It has been known as a manufacturing tooling center. It has been known as a fastener center. And more recently, it has been known for its automotive and aerospace industries. Each of these transformations resulted because of the entrepreneurial spirit and the ingenuity of people in the region. Another positive is the recent growth in high-level, high-value-added industries, which have high wages and high-value additive products that flow through the region. An example is the current emphasis on the aerospace industry. I did not do this because of Woodward, by the way. It's just a fact. But if you take a look at the emphasis on the aerospace industry and also on the automotive industry, these have been 2 target industries that have really paid off for the region. And we've been able to attract and grow those 2 industries in the region. And I think one of the significant things about that, especially for the aerospace industry, is the coming together of the economic development professionals and the educational professionals and the political leadership, and actually develop a public education, community college, higher education program to prepare the workforce necessary to maintain and grow those industries in the region. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the initiative of the Rockford School District with its Readiness Rocks program. This project has the potential to elevate the performance standards of students and making sure that they have the background and knowledge and to assure that the 21st century workforce will be available in our region. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For our purposes tonight, I would like to concentrate my remarks on the built environment, but that should not diminish the importance of the natural environment as this transformation process moves forward. The subjects you see on the screen are what I'd like to cover tonight. First is the issue of sprawl. This graphic that you see in front of you defines the urban footprint in 1940 in the light green color, and the urban footprint today in the dark green color. The north-south black line that you see is the Rock River, running from South Beloit on the top of the screen to the Ogle County border at the bottom. The east-west black line is State Street, running from downtown Belvedere on the right to the Stevenson County line on the east, actually on the left. This growth rate reflects a 7-fold increase in urban land mass, while the corresponding increase in population was barely double. Our region went from using 3% of its total acreage in 1940 to 20% of its land mass today. Now, the Rockford region is not alone. This growth trend permeates throughout the United States. Collectively, we focused on new development and lost the ability to properly maintain our existing infrastructure. Our property and sale tax dollars had to be spread over a wider and wider infrastructure base, to the point where in poor economic times, we had to cut basic services. And while we collectively had the best interests and intentions for prosperity, this growth trend has had many unintended consequences. The most notable of which is that we lost touch with our existing neighborhoods, and we stopped valuing the contributions of our traditional commercial corridors. For many neighborhoods, that meant a downward spiral of blight, poverty, vacancy, foreclosure, and ultimately hope. And in neighborhoods where the concentration of poverty reached a tipping point, which is generally regarded somewhere between 15 to 25%, many of these neighborhoods fell into serious distress. And again, the Rockford region was not alone. Next slide. Oh, back up one. Sorry. It is estimated that concentrated poverty affects 4,400 neighborhoods in the United States. In the graphic that you see in front of you, you can see the Rockford region, directly adjacent to Chicago, is being rated in the high category, the second worst category on the slide. In a recent TEDx presentation, the U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Sean Donovan, said, and I quote, "The single biggest predictor of a children's life chances, even their lifespan, is the zip code they grow up in. The effect of concentrated poverty is an economic calamity for our cities and for our nation. And what is left is quite accurately described as a desert. A food desert, a banking desert, a retail desert for basic life necessities." So what does the situation look like for Rockford? This is the situation in the year 2000. Any neighborhood in yellow, brown, or red has passed that tipping point. Now let's look at today. We have neighborhoods where more than 3 out of every 4 persons live in poverty. And the long-term outcomes are well known to us: crime, low educational achievement, lack of job skills, disinvestment, unemployment, and long-term personal health issues. And now we have become the underwater mortgage capital of the United States. These are the brutal facts of concentrated poverty. But it is not all bad news. Our region lies within one of the top technology corridors in the United States. Interstate 90, which is fondly known as the Golden Corridor because of the golden goose that it laid, is a strong component of our economic future, especially for our advanced manufacturing clusters, particularly aerospace, and you've heard about those tonight. It is our major river of commerce, and it's up to us to manage our assets wisely going forward while not forgetting about our neighborhoods. Thank you.
So these things, these elements, they're all elements of our culture. And what do we mean by culture? Do we mean Burpee, our great museums, our great parks? Sure, those are also elements, but we're talking about culture here in the biggest sense of the definition, that which brings joy to life, the value of living. These are the things that we got to move the needle on. They're not the only things, as was already mentioned. There's been some hope demonstrated tonight too, some positives. The ultimate signpost of hope is the 1,000+ people in this room tonight. So please use the Post-it notes. Tell us what other brutal facts you'd like to see us work towards moving the needle on to ultimately enhance our culture and have our proper place in our region, our nation, and ultimately the world. Thank you. Mike?
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Mike Shablaski. I'm with Transform Rockford. Thank you for sitting through the brutal facts. They were certainly brutal. Thank you, team. And I know we're speaking to generally a group that's, if you're already here, you probably feel like you know a lot of these. But I think that brings us to an important point in the night. And we have to do this inventory of our situation. And you might not even say, you might say we haven't even inventoried everything that should concern us. But what are we going to do about it? Are we going to accept this as our destiny? Do we mean to make dramatic change to actually transform the community? And as Tom said, we have to have a vision. And that's going to be the first step as we move down this path, is to commit to reject this condition and the things that bring it on. So appreciate your patience in going through that. Now, we can reject this for a variety of reasons. We can reject it because we don't like being ranked third most miserable. We can reject it because we do not like the condition of our markets that we're selling products or services into, or the place where our workforce lives. But behind these statistics are individuals and organizations that are not realizing their potential, that are suffering, that are losing hope. And I would hope that this is part of what motivates us to be here, that it is more than just statistics, but the statistics represent real issues that affect real people. And I'm reminded of that every day, and I have the opportunity to meet some great people, some of which are doing great and doing wonderful things within the community, and others that are struggling. And what we need to do is acknowledge that despite all the great efforts and all the resources that are being put toward addressing these issues, we do not have an acceptable outcome. So that's one of the things we need to pause here and commit to, is that this is not acceptable, and we need to consider doing something dramatically different. So as bad as this is, don't despair. As Tom said, there is a process for addressing this. It's not acceptable, but what are we going to do about it? And we're going to throw up here on the slides here shortly what we're going to do about it. And we're going to walk through some of the things. Now, the first thing we need is engagement of a lot of people. This is a good start, but we need more. That's number one, though. The engagement of the people and the organizations of the region is number one. We need to have, we have to have values, as Steve mentioned in the opening. I mean, it's critical to guiding us in what we do and how we work together. We need to have a process, something that we all understand, what steps go before what, and we'll communicate that next. And then we're going to wrap all of that with a heavy dose of communication so that we all know what's being planned, what's next, what's being said, what's drafted, offered for consideration, last call, and then it's finalized. Okay? So, again, appreciate your patience. We're going to move into the next steps sort of part of this evening. We're going to start that by addressing what the process looks like. And to do that, I'm going to ask Scott Anderson and Angel Contreras to step forward and walk you through that. Thank you.